2, 3. Getting ready to go live. 1, 2, 3. We're live. Welcome back to Real Cast Fishing. Your host, Glenn, with the City Banner Fishing Field Team, COAF Field Team on YouTube. And this round, what do we got for you? We got the tips 86 through 90 from the Little Red Book of Fly Fishing. And we'll just go right into it. And then I do have a little recap of yours truly hitting a local pond with some 3D printed poppers. So stay tuned for that. But let's go right into the business at hand, which is going through some of these key tips from the Little Red Book of Fly Fishing. We'll start out with tip 86, downstream and dirty. One way to avoid lining a fish with your cast, as well as a cure for tricky currents and difficult drifts, is to make your presentation directly downstream. Simply place your offering in line of drift above the fish and let the current do the rest. The first thing the trout will see is your fly, not your line. It's not always simple, of course. You'll need to stay far enough upstream to avoid the window of vision. It also helps to use a presentation cast such as the S-cast to keep slack in the line and to pay out line smoothly to the guides to extend the drift. So, yeah, I do like that tip. Why? It's kind of the key thing that I like doing is, that I like doing is, and this goes with just normal fishing as well, is the first thing the fish sees is the fly or the lure. And I'm just going back and just recapping that. So some good advice from the Little Red Book of Fly Fishing. So let's go on to the next tip. Tip 87, how dry am I? Keeping dry is desirable in martinis and rainstorms. When it comes to fishing a floating fly, it's critical for reasons best known for trout. A fly that sinks ever so slightly when fish are feeding exclusively on the surface is refused consistently. Ours not to wonder why, ours just to keep it dry. The fly fishing industry has created various liquid, paste, and crystal products to keep flies dry. With use, you'll discover that works best for you. Just remember that you have to keep applying this stuff regularly to get its benefits. Perhaps the best strategy is to change flies often, particularly after catching a fish. Allow the used fly to dry completely before treating it again. Sometimes the fault is in the fly itself, either through poor design or improper material. If you find this fly in your box, throw it out. Anglers are schooled to pay close attention to speed of the drift, but lose sight of the precise fashion in which they float. The latter is as important as the first. All right, so another good point there about keeping your dry fly dry. There are different floats, and I've been guilty of that, where I'll just keep plugging away and fishing away a particular dry fly, and it gets beat up, and now it's just sinking, and I'm basically fishing it wet. I have tried, especially with the Griffiths gnat, using the same waterproofing like Scott spray, which is a silicone base. I've sprayed that on flies, and I've had some good results where it stays floaty for sometimes the whole outing. They do get beat up though, so I do like the advice of switching your fly out. But bottom line, the key takeaway out of tip 87 is make sure the dry fly stays dry. Yeah. All right, common sense, but hey, from the Little Red Book of Fly Fishing, there's a lot of good info there to be had. All right, let's go on to the next tip, tip 88. Getting to the bottom of things. The month, January. The river, Colorado's Roaring Fork. The challenge, getting flies down to sluggish trout holding close to the bottom in extremely cold water. 3 anglers tried a more conventional approach, drifting beadhead nymphs with a couple of split shot while furiously mending line to neutralize a steady current. Each caught an occasional fish, working hard for their strikes. A 4th companion seemed to have a trout with every second cast, chortling at the obvious discomfort of his far less successful friends. Close inspection revealed his novel and highly effective approach. His flies were heavily weighted with tungsten wire and tungsten bead, with about the same specific gravity as a ship's anchor. That's pretty funny. He also pinched 2 larger split shot to his leader. The truly novel ingredient was the balsa indicator, much like an antique panfish bobber that was large enough to stay afloat above all that weight. With this rig, our friend could kept his offering dead drifted in the zone much longer than anyone else, and he had the fish to show for it. Such a weighty assembly isn't for everyone, but when trout are hugging bottom, it gets results. Okay, yeah, another good one. I think I've seen this before, especially when you're doing some two-handed casting, spay casting, switch casting, where they call it a indicator and fly rig, tandem rig, really heavy weighted fly, and they're casting it, and they call it the chuck and duck rig, where you've got a really heavy strike indicator to hold this weighty rig. In this case, they're saying putting some extra tungsten wire on the fly, and basically you got to kind of duck sometimes when you're casting. So it's the chuck and duck rig. So hey, it still goes back to what I've seen in the book and what I've seen and heard from others, as well as yours truly's experience out in the field, is you got to get your fly to where the trout are lurking. So if they're deep, you got to do what you can to get your fly there, because if you're not in the money zone, well, those trout aren't going to strike. All right, so another common sense but good takeaway from the Little Red Book. All right, let's go on to the next one. This is going to be tip 89. Time on water equals fish, part 1. So it's a two-part. Let's go check it out. I distinctly remember one spring afternoon on the Green River in Utah, fishing from Denny Breer's boat. We were well downstream from the Flaming Gorge Dam in the C section, far from weekend crowds upstream. The water was clear, yet large trout were keyed on big, dry cicada patterns, and is why you go fish the Green River. I made a shot against the bank as the boat floated downstream, and after a few seconds lifted the rod to fire away at the riffle behind a rock. No, hang on, wait, said Denny. Let that fly ride a while. Mend, keep it drifting, but keep it in the water. If it's not in the water for at least 30 seconds, that's not long enough. As if on cue, a brown trout emerged from the river bottom, then lollygagged its way downstream, nosing the back of my fly, almost like it was sniffing it. For a good 30 yards as we drifted along, finally almost painstakingly, the trout wrapped his chompers around the bug with deliberation, and I set the hook. It turned out the biggest fish I caught, or have caught, since on the Green River. We have often hear the adage that flies in the air have never caught a trout. And it's so true. Too much casting can add a bad thing, but flies in the water, especially when they are set up right and floating through feeding lanes, are never a bad thing. Fishing from a drifting boat allows you to keep those flies on the water longer, which is why you do it. Set them up correctly, then let them ride for as long as they float and for as long as you can manage them. After all, explained Denny, time on water equals fish. Keep that in mind whenever you fish, whether you're in a boat or not. Okay, so hey, another good one. Time on the water equals fish. This was part 1, and all it's basically saying is and gave the example of a nice brown trout being caught on the Green River in Utah, where the individual is cast the fly, and instead of just recasting quickly and doing these mends, he's being told by the guy to keep that fly in that money zone or that lane, and the trout, sure enough, came up and nosed it, sniffed it, and then took it. So yeah, another one. Time on water equals fish. If your fly is up in the air while you're casting, in other words, you're doing more casting than actually keeping that fly on the water or the river, how's a fish going to get it unless he really jumps up there and gets it out while you're casting? Haven't had that happen too often. Excuse me, if at all. I wonder, has anyone had that happen where you're casting away and all of a sudden a fish comes out of the water and takes your fly as you're whipping it over the water? I seen fish do that with some bugs flying out in the above the water close to the surface, but it never happened to me while I was actually fishing. Interesting. All right, let's go to the last one for this round. It's going to be tip 90, another time on water equals part 2. Let's go ahead and run to that section real quick. Oh, sorry. All right, here we go. Number 90, tip 90, time on water equals fish, part 2. The time on water equals fish axiom has a dual purpose. Pertaining to the angler, there is simply no substitute for experience. No book, magazine, or newspaper article, video or DVD can ever take the place of the hands-on learning value of actually being on the trout river, soaking it all in and seeing how this game unfolds firsthand. Reference resources can be helpful primers, and good ones can shorten the learning curve dramatically. But in the end, fly fishing for trout becomes an innate endeavor. You develop instincts. You learn to know where to look for trout. You learn to cast as a reflex action. You sense a trout's presence. You anticipate a strike before it happens. You recognize the slightest motion in telltales. You know where a trout would turn during a fight. In the end, this doesn't have a real impact until you see it and experience it for yourself. You'll ultimately be your own best coach after a long period of trial, error, and experience. Terry Gunn, owner of Lee's Ferry Anglers Fly Shop and Guide Service on the west side of the Colorado River in Marble Canyon, Arizona, once told me that an angler doesn't get really good until he learns how to teach himself and realizes that he is doing it. It might seem like a long way off, but it happens to everyone who sticks with the game. Sooner or later, the game shifts from the mind to the gut, and you'll catch more fish. The key is to spend your time reinforcing good habits and techniques. Spend your time wisely, squander your experiences by replaying bad habits, and you'll never get much better, but improve in incremental bites every time you hit the water, and success will become second nature. Time on water equals fish. All righty. Okay, I like that. It goes to, you'll go to a particular river, you go to a particular, fishing place in general, and you'll see these old timers just catching fish after fish after fish, as well as fishing guides who've had all that time on the water, and it's like they can smell out the technique, the tip, whatever's we're going to work that day, and quickly figure out what's happening. So hey, another good one. All right, so that was tips 86 through 90 from the Little Red Book of Fly Fishing in the Real Cast Fishing podcast series. Episode 12. We got more to come, but hey, let's go and shift to some open items. I wanted to kind of shift over to, videos are always nice. So I'm just going to recap yours truly. It's not fly fishing. It's ultralight bait casting, where I took some 3D printed poppers and, made a few and took them out to this local pond and had a good time catching, losing a few, as well as releasing a few bass. So let's go to the video real quick, and I'll just step through it. It's also already posted. It's the edited version of the mobile fishing live stream that I'll do when I'm out and about in the field. So it sometimes has some fishing, fly fishing, as well as bait fishing or other different kind of fishing techniques. So here's the video. All right, so here I am. I've got a 3D printed popper. It's a red and white variety. I'm using a Bait Finesse casting BFS reel, capable casting 1/24 ounce because I put a high-speed spool bearing on it. And guess what? Took a little bit to catch one. In fact, here I am. I had one take and I missed the strike. So my mojo was off. And unfortunately, it took a little bit longer than I expected to get my first one on, but I did eventually catch one. So here is yours truly kind of working it in, kind of popping it in, doing these short, erratic retrieves. And as I get closer to the bank, I'd say maybe 20 feet, I finally get one. It's not a big one, but hey, it was still good to catch one on a 3D printed micro popper. There he is. Pretty cool dude. All right. So I kept that up, and there's that 3D printed popper. And unfortunately, my mojo was still off. I ended up missing two more. So here's another one where he hit it, and I just couldn't get it hooked in time. And this one only had one treble hook. I did it again, and the same thing happened. I got a nice hit, and boom, he gets off. And so I had to make a little change here, so I opted to switch out my lure. Still with the 3D printed popper, but this one had 2 treble hooks. And this one actually sinks at a slow rate and eventually will hit bottom, which will come into play here after I get through this little dry spell, missing basically some fish and whatnot. So it casts well, especially on the Bait Finesse style reel and combo that I'm using. I'm able to cast pretty much across that pond. But like I was saying, the 2 hooks versus 1 hook, I think that came into play here, and I finally get one on the line as I'm doing that short twitchy retrieve, and bam, there he is. He puts up a good fight. He's actually a jumper, so he's going to come in. I think he's going to jump a couple of times here. Let's see if he does. Yep, there's one. Woohoo! And he's coming in, right, almost there. There are some bigger bass in this pond. I've seen them. They just don't want to strike my lure. But these guys are consistent ones, ranging from some little 10 to 12 inch ones all the way up to, I think this one may be the bigger one of the ones I caught this round. I'd say maybe, what is he? 14-inch maybe, not a big one, and he's kind of skinny, but bottom line, he was biting. So I kind of moved to the other side, and I noticed that there were a lot of bass on beds, and I wasn't sure they were going to strike my surface popper, especially the other one that definitely floated. But this one sort of gets waterlogged. I think I got some holes in and whatnot, but that came into play here because I was able to see, especially the red and yellow color of this popper, and I could actually see the bass go over there and swipe it. So here I'm dropping it right into that little color or discolored area where it's where there is a bass, and you can actually see the bass come in there and move like a shadow of it. And I tried multiple times, and it's one of those things when you're fishing bass on beds is the ones that are really interested, they will immediately react to your offering. They'll come and mouth it, strike it, look at it. The ones that don't, they either just scurry off or ignore you. I mean, I'd put the popper, a fly, whatever I'm using, right in front of their noses, and he does not take. But in other cases, when they are active and they are reacting to what I'm offering, I'll keep going and keep recasting until either I've hooked them or if I lose them and basically had to put a hook in his mouth. But in this case, you'll see here in a little bit how I was able to keep casting at one, and I actually had 2 hookups on him. So this one, I believe, is where I'm going to finally get him. Yeah, there he is. And that took, I'd say, 5-6 tries. And I kept at it mainly because I saw the bass continuing to react to my offering. In this case, that 3D popper where it would sink down. This one's another one. I believe he's reacting fairly quickly. It took several casts as well. I'll hook him, but I think I'm going to lose him. And I did that several times where, yeah, right there. Ooh, that was a close one. That one almost hit me. Right there comes the lure. Woo! Came right by on my left side, and luckily I did not get hooked. And unfortunately, bass didn't get hooked either. Anyways, this one stayed active. I ended up coming back to him and catching him, I believe, at the tail end of the outing. But I kept working again. I believe I'm going back to, no, this is the same one where I just missed him, but I just came back, I think about 5-10 minutes later, and I'm recasting the spot, and I'm now working the popper. I can see it. I got a good visual on it. And the reason why I kept at it again was he still continued to react to my lure. So you get an interested bass that is reacting to what you're offering, definitely keep at it. It's sort of a dead giveaway that they still want to they still are interested or in either your offering, protecting their bed or whatnot, versus the one where it'll sit there and you just have to be frustrated because he's ignoring everything you're giving it. All right, so for those on the live stream or after the stream, definitely post in there if you haven't any issues or concerns of, hey, how do you know when to stop or move on from a bass that is on its bed during the spawning? And I don't know. What I found is best to watch and see their reaction. Let the bass tell you. If he's going to ignore you, if you dropped it right in front of his nose multiple times, I'd say move on. But if he's going to keep at it and keep popping at it, I say keep doing it. In this case, this one over here that you're going to see where I cast past the bed, I drop it right there, move it past his tail, and then he's going to hit it. And that one, I probably cast to him about 10, 12 times over the course of this trip. And what's also nice is I can see it because I got my polarized glasses. I can see the red and yellow coloring, and I'll get them on the lure, or I'll get them on the line here. But unfortunately, my mojo was still off. I had several where they were on the line, and as I was bringing them in, I lost them. Or in other cases, he was on the line and he was right there and he came off as I was trying to lift him up off the bank. I didn't bring a net here and I was just kind of playing around. This is one of those quick trips with the little mobile live streaming that I do. And yeah, this is one of those ones where you just get frustrated, but in the end, what keeps you going is they will strike eventually, especially if they are on their bed but reacting to your lure. So I think this one took like 6 casts, but it's coming, and let's see if he takes it. Let's see. Oh, someone put a little comment here. Hi, how's it going? Just talking fishing here and just going recapping some stuff. All right. Let's see. Hey, how's it going? Good morning. Just recapping some stuff from earlier this week where we were doing some bait finesse style casting. This is after we finished up the Little Red Book of Fly Fishing tips 86 through 90. So if you get a chance, you can go back and rewind and check it out. What species am I targeting, Miss Kibble? It's a bass, or largemouth bass. They're currently in spawn right now in our area. And what I'm doing is just showing you how frustrating it can be when you are working bass that are still interested in your offering, but you're just not hooking into them. Or in this case, I get them on the line and I lose them. So this one I cast multiple times, and here he comes. I think he's going to be on the line here shortly. I'll just end up losing him though. Okay, so let's see. All right. XX Gina. Okay, all right, good. All right, take care. Yeah, we're over here in the North Texas area, and currently there's been a lot of rain and whatnot, and a few tornadoes have been reported overnight, and I think we're going through another round of thunderstorms coming through. But hey, if you're indoors, you can, if you're not fishing, you can at least talk fishing. All right. So I believe this one I'll have on the line, and I'm going to lose him. Yeah, there he is. So I'm bringing him in, and there, he threw the hook on me right when I'm lifting him up. Bam. There he is. Lost him. All right, there he goes. Hey, but you keep at it, and what's cool is with the coloration of the 3D popper, it sure did make a difference. I could see my lure. I could see the bass in relation to the lure and get a good idea if I've got its interest, as well as I can actually see the bass strike the lure, take the lure, and whatnot. And so, again, 3D printed popper. I've got several varieties that I put together. This one is the red and yellow popper that actually sinks. And then there's another one that I've got that's a red and white one that floats. This one, the red and yellow, has 2 hooks. The white one, red and white, has 1 hook. And what I've been finding, at least in the area, is 2 hooks are working much better for yours truly than 1 hook. When I had the 1 hook on there, I was hooking them, but I was missing them. All right, and then if you can see in the video, you can see some lighter color areas. Those are the beds that the bass have made, and here's where I'm finally getting one in. Okay. Well, there we go. Yeah, fun stuff. 3D printed popper. All right. So let's, oh, my bad. Okay. All right. Appreciate you joining, and it was a good recap of the Little Red Book of Fly Fishing, tips 86 through 90, and went through the 3D printed popper, just a recap of the live stream, fishing live stream that I do when I'm out and about. I do one on a GoPro. I do another one on a mobile phone, Android, and so far it's been a good round. I've got several of them where, at least this year, doing some pond fishing with the one was with the fishing flies, 2 of them. One was the beadhead damsel fly in a white variety or variant, and I worked a pond and did some good fishing there. Do check that one out, as well as another one where I'm using a streamer called an olive near deer, and that one did well, kind of off and on and hitting a few places. Plus there was one where I was using some foam flies as well that did well. So do check that out, as well as these 3D printed variety ones that I've been putting out there. Let's see, Bradley Eastman. Howdy, howdy. How's it going? All right. I think that's it. So appreciate y'all joining, and we'll be back again in the Real Cast Fishing Podcast, Little Red Book of Fly Fishing series, as well as I do another one that is a fishing ramblings, where we're just talking open forum, Q&A, whatnot, just talking the latest on what we've been doing from a fishing update standpoint. And today, well, we're kind of indoors because there's a lot of rain. All right. Appreciate y'all joining. Do check out the video and get the recap on tips 86 through 90 of the Little Red Book of Fly Fishing. All for now, from the Real Cast Fishing Podcast, from your host, Glenn, with the Save Island Fishing Field team. Take care.